Namaste, yogis. The light in me honors the light in you. And in the light, we are one. I hope this video finds you safe and well wherever you are in the world in the times that we find ourselves in. This video playlist series is created for the times that we live in, for you to reclaim your power and tap into your inner warrior. In previous videos, we have explored our warrior archetype through movement, through the fierce avatar of Shiva in Hatha Yoga and in primal movement, a fully embodied movement practice created by Liz Arch that weaves together yoga asana, martial arts, and self-healing qigong to tap into our primal power. So in the times that we find ourselves in, we could experience one of two things. Maybe we're over amplified and stressed and we're at our wits' end. We can't sleep. We don't feel like eating and we're overwhelmed with rage and anger. Those movement videos will help give you access and the ability to release some of that so we don't create dis-ease in our body, and we can refuel to go back out and protest and do the things that we need to do, from raising your children to going to work and so on. It can also help replenish you. If you're in a free state, it can amplify and get you out of that stuck feeling where you don't know what to do or where to begin to use your voice and so on. So may these videos serve you well in the times that we find ourselves in and ignite and embody that aspect of yourself within. We have also explored our inner warrior through the language of the stars, through astrology. And we did that through two videos where we channeled our inner Aries and our Mars archetypes. Here in this video, we are exploring the energetics of the warrior through the tarot. So let's take a moment here. I've got all my notes. Take a moment and let's take a breath together. Exhale all the air out of the body. You can close your eyes. Take a big inhale through the nose. Hold it. Open the mouth and sigh it out. One more time like that. Big inhale. And exhale. You can keep the eyes closed or softly blink them open. Regardless, I want you to imagine a flame within you that never goes out. For centuries across every ancient civilization, the warrior has stood as a guardian of the threshold, the protector of the realm, and the guardian at the gate. It is an energy that doesn't just live in fairy tales and sacred stories and history books, but in the very marrow of our souls. In the tarot, this isn't just about combat. It is the sacred discipline of the spirit and the courage to face our own shadows. Today, we draw back the veil to see how the cards can act as mirrors, revealing the fighter, the protector, and the strategist within you. So let's awaken this archetype and explore what the cards can offer you in a reading, or if you want to put one on your altar, just so you can try to pull from that for inspiration, you can do that as well. So in this video, I'm going to focus on the elements of fire and air, the court cards that speak to me in regards to the warrior archetype, and the major arcana that also point to types of warriors that we carry within. Now, as we explore this archetype, we're going to focus on the light as well as the dark, right? The shadow aspect is just as powerful as the light. So for example, in the shadow sense, if you are deficient and your shadow is deflated, there is a difficulty standing up for oneself, standing your ground. You experience passivity. There's a fear of conflict or confrontation and not expressing one's voice or boundary. If the shadow is excessive or inflated, then we experience uncontrolled aggression, bullying, the tyrant, or very rigid boundaries. So when we move through the cards and we talk about them, we'll touch here and there on the light and the dark of each one. Let's begin with the elements of fire and air. So we'll start with the suit of wands, which is the spiritual and primal warrior. So the suit of wands represents this internal fire in our gut. It's the instinct to act, just like Aries in astrology. So this is the warrior as an explorer, a defender, and a competitor, an athlete, right? This is raw energy, fire. It's about why we fight. It represents passion, ambition, and the spiritual drive to overcome your obstacles. The struggle that fire can have, very similar to the Five of Wands, this shows a warrior in training or competition. This is the messy, chaotic side of conflict. This can also be our inner thought pattern, right? Battling all the voices within. Now, the stand that we take may be, that is the Seven of Wands. This is the archetype of the underdog, defending a moral high ground against an opposing force. Or maybe your fire is about the grit, right? The Nine of Wands, the wounded warrior at the gate who is exhausted but refuses to quit, embodying pure resilience. No one gets past the gate but through him. And then we come to the element of air, the suit of swords, the intellectual and strategic warrior. So the suit of swords, tongue twister, suit of swords, represents the disciplined mind. So this is the strategist, the tactician, the truth seeker, and the judge. The suit of swords has mental sharpness. It's about how we fight. It represents the clarity, the logic, and the decisive communication needed to cut through illusions, even maybe cutting someone out of your life if necessary, cutting a habit, a job, and so on. Now, the conflict with this suit, it shows the darker side of war, like betrayal, the Seven of Swords, where you get tricked. It shows loss in love, the battlefield of the heart, Three of Swords. And the mental toll that battles take on our quest of daily living, the Nine of Swords, where we stay up at night ruminating over the battles that we carried on in the day, or just being stressed about what comes tomorrow. The boundary in this suit is the Queen of Swords. She represents the warrior who has experienced battle, has overcome, and has very strong boundaries. Do not mess with this. She now uses her sword in unbiased truth. She can see through the bullshit. I love this card. Now, while Wands represents the courage to start the fight, Swords represents the skill to finish it. So without the Wands, the warrior has no heart. You can think of Leo energy in the astrology. Their passion and their fire, right? Aries, the will to go. Sag, the visionary, right? Without the warrior of wands, the warriors of wands, there is no heart. And without swords, the warrior has no plan, right? So you can think of the air signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. So as we've discussed these elements, let's go ahead and tap into the court cards that really point to the warrior. So all the knights can be seen as warriors on missions, but the Knight of Swords is the most traditional, battle-ready figure, while the Knight of Wands represents passion and impulsive action, right? So let's compare the heart of the warrior and the mind of the warrior. So in astrology, as I said, this is often the difference between Mars, the warrior planet, the god of war, in the sign, like if we're talking about the suit of wands, that would be Mars in Aries, its ruling sign, Leo or Sagittarius, or the Knight of Swords, right? This would be Mars-driven air sign, Mars in Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius. So let's compare these two. So Knight of Wands, fire, Knight of Swords, air. This is the archetype of the Crusader. This is the archetype of the strategic commando. This vibe, hot, impulsive, charismatic, and bold. This vibe, sharp, cold, logical, and fast-paced. Now the motivation here, the inspiration, he fights because he feels a calling or a thrill. The objective here, his motivation, he fights because it is the logical solution or the truth. Now often this is the Rider-Waite deck, you can see that this horse often rearing up indicates high speed and bursts of energy. I think this is the fastest card in the tarot, honestly. This is penetrating energy. He is charging straight forward, indicating linear, unrelenting momentum. The weapon, a wooden staff, growth potential, he uses it to spark change. A double-edged blade, he uses it to cut, divide, and clarify. The shadow side of this is recklessness, starting fires that you can't put out, and fire that leads to burnout. This is cruelty, the shadow side of tunnel vision and forgetting the human cost of the mission. Now, when we want to, oh, hello, Babette. Somebody's hungry. Now, when we want to use this card to tap into our power, and let's say you want to put it on an altar or channel this energy, right? You can call on the Knight of Wands when you feel stuck or in procrastination. This amplifies and ignites fire, right? This is maybe you need the courage to launch a new project or something. This is the leap and the net will appear warrior. He is about action for the sake of passion. Now, the Knight of Swords, if you want to use this energy for yourself, this would be if you're in a confusing or toxic situation that you need to cut that cord, or this provides the mental armor to speak an uncomfortable truth. This is the action for the sake of clarity. So we have the court cards and the elements that they represent. Let's talk about the court cards. So in the Major Arcana, the warrior transitions from a literal soldier into a master of the self. Now, while the Minor Arcana, Wands and Swords, show the tools of the battle, the Major Arcana cards represent the evolution of the soul through the warrior's path. So there's 3 phases of the Major Arcana warrior. First, the external warrior, the Chariot. This is the young warrior archetype. It's about victory through effort and the mastery of opposing forces. Now, the lesson when this card is pulled is about harnessing your beasts, emotions, distractions, conflicting desires, the black and white type of thinking that only takes you in one direction, right? So the shadow of this card, when this archetype here is out of balance, the warrior, the chariot, becomes a steamroller, believing that might makes right, or that one's will is the only thing that matters. If the warrior loses focus, the sphinxes can pull in opposite directions, and the chariot, the life path, flips over. It represents aggression without an objective. If you want to use this in the light, use the chariot as a focus to take the reins of your life. It is the card of pure, unadulterated willpower and the external conquest of obstacles. This is also fast-moving energy. Now, the astrological sign associated with this is Cancer. You can think of the hard shell protecting the soft interior, literal armor of the warrior. Let's talk about the second phase of the Major Arcana, the Emperor. This represents the strategist, the commander, and the defender. Now, this doesn't matter who's pulling this card. It could be male or female, right? We're in energetics now, not gender. This represents the strategist, the commander, and the defender. Now, while the chariot is the warrior in motion, the emperor is the warrior established. He is the sovereign warrior who has moved beyond the battlefield to create a world worth protecting. This is the wise warrior or commander archetype. It represents the warrior who has won the war and now must maintain the peace. So the lesson when you have this card, or you're trying to channel this energy, is establishing boundaries, creating structure, and protecting the vulnerable. He is the warrior as defender of the realm. This is all the kings combined into one. Now, the shadow side of the emperor, and you may see some in the world these days, when the warrior emperor loses his heart, he becomes a tyrant. He becomes so obsessed with control that he crushes growth, using strength to intimidate rather than to lead. This is the toxic shadow where the warrior fights to suppress others rather than to liberate them. Now, if you want to use this card in the light for yourself, or if you have pulled this card, you can use the Emperor when you need to step into a leadership role or set firm, non-negotiable boundaries in your personal or professional life. Now, the astrology sign linked to this card is Aries, the initiator and the spark of fight. Now, phase 3. So once you've moved from the Chariot to the Emperor, we now have Strength. This is one of my favorite cards. The Internal Warrior. This is the mature warrior archetype. It represents victory through endurance and soft power. The lesson here with this card when it is pulled is true strength isn't about how hard you hit, but how much you can endure and how well you can tame your own animal nature. Strength wins through force of character. This is the weaponless warrior. Note that the figure in this card wears no armor, right? She has no weapon. She tames the lion, the ego instinct, with a gentle touch. Now, this represents the warrior who has mastered self-regulation. The shadow side of the Strength card, in the lower stages of the warrior archetype, we can try to kill our inner demons, anger, lust, fear, right? The highest warrior realizes these are sources of energy, not weaknesses. Instead of killing the lion, she makes him her loyal companion. The infinity symbol, the halo above her head, signifies that she is a warrior connected to a higher spiritual source. Her strength is infinite because it doesn't rely on physical muscle. It relies on spiritual endurance and fortitude. And why is this the highest rank in the phases? It's harder to stay kind in the face of aggression than it is to strike back. Strength is the victory of the higher self over the reptilian brain. A sword strike is just a moment. Strength is a lifelong state of being. It is the inner warrior who can sit with pain, wait out a storm, and remain compassionate under pressure. Strength has the courage to be vulnerable. As you see with the star, the ultimate warrior is the one who can be naked, unarmored, because they are no longer afraid of their own shadows. Strength is the warrior who has moved from power over to power within. So we use strength for facing internal battles, addiction, fear, anger. It teaches the warrior to face the lion, the shadow within, with a gentle hand rather than a sword. And this card is linked to Leo and the courageous heart. So now that we've talked about the court cards, the elements, and the major arcana, let's go a little further with the major arcana into the hidden warrior cards, the Tower and the Star. Ooh, when this comes up, everybody's like, ooh, when this gets pulled in a reading. But you know what? I've had a couple Tower moments in my life, and I always look back on them. They're amazing. Because after the fall is the rise if you have the courage and the willpower to do so, right? So the Tower is the warrior in crisis. This is the experience of the fortress falling. So it represents the moment the warrior's old defenses are no longer working and they must survive the collapse to rebuild. So in the context of this archetype, the Tower is the moment of total ego collapse, the dark night of the soul, if you will, where every defense mechanism, shield, and fortification fails simultaneously. If you know your astrology and you know a Tower moment, usually with Pluto, right? Or Uranus, lightning strike of change. This card is ruled by Mars energy, but for me personally, it's Uranus because it is lightning, shock, awe, and the disruption to liberate you, right? That's what Uranus does. Liberate you from whatever it is that you've outgrown or that doesn't serve you anymore, right? So you can think of the warrior, the tower as the warrior's fortress, right? And this still goes to the ego in my mind. In myth, a warrior is only as good as their armor and the walls they build. The tower represents the shattering of a false security. Now, when this card is pulled, this is the point where you can realize the warrior, you've been playing perhaps a defense strategy, maybe your anger, maybe you're overly rigid or what have you, is all these things, your opinion, right, becomes a prison. So the 3 lessons of the Tower Warrior. Number 1, the failure of strategy. The warrior usually believes they can outthink or outfight any threat, right? The tower is the act of God, the unseen external force that cannot be defeated by traditional combat. It teaches humility. The second lesson is the shedding of the armor. When the lightning strikes, the warrior falls. This is forced vulnerability. For someone seeking their inner warrior, the tower suggests that their current boundaries are actually barriers preventing growth. The third lesson in the tower is the clean slate. So the most potent warrior is the one who has lost everything and no longer fears defeat. As the tower falls, it reveals the foundational truth of who the person is without their warrior accolades or their armor and defenses. So you can use, if you want to put this on your altar, this is like Kali energy right here, right? If you pull this card or you want to work with this card, right, when you know it's time to dismantle things, and you're in an upheaval, you can ask yourself, what part of your armor, what part is too heavy now to keep moving forward? What's too tight? What have you outgrown? And what is the universe now forcibly removing from your life and off of you? Think of, releasing that heavy armor so you can breathe again. So the tower, like I said, traditionally is ruled by Mars. For me, it's Uranus. And Mars is the planet of war. And this card, Mars, is not the soldier marching to orders. It is the destructive, purifying fire that burns away what is obsolete. It is the controlled burn necessary for a forest to grow back stronger, right? So fires don't burn everything down. Yeah. It's a good thing when you see the Tower card. It might be like, oh shit, but it's a good thing. If you're used to the death and rebirth cycle, it's pretty fantastic. Because when you have your rebirth, you look back and everything that fell apart was worth it when you're on the other side. Now, if the tower is the battlefield in flames, the star card is the silence that follows. The moment that the warrior removes that scorched armor to wash the wounds in a cold stream. This is the healer warrior. So the star represents vulnerability that requires the most profound courage. In the star card, she's naked, suggesting that true power no longer needs a shield. This is the phase where the warrior processes battle fatigue. It's about replenishing the spirit after the ego death of the tower. Hope as a weapon. Here, the warrior learns that optimism and faith are strategic assets. Without hope, a warrior becomes a mercenary. With the star, they become a protector of the future. So in astrology, the star is ruled by the sign of Aquarius, the water bearer, right? And Aquarius is the future, and the mantra is, we are all one. It's the butterfly effect, right? The butterfly flaps its wings and there's a tornado somewhere else, right? You pull one part of the spider web, the whole thing moves. And when one understands this, then battle becomes something different. What you fight for, what you protect, what you lead becomes something different. And in the midst of those proverbial and symbolic battles, right, when we come home to heal and process who are we after that's over and after we've healed. I think that's quite powerful. That's part of the rebirth, because you take what you've learned and step forward in a new way, right? Even more evolved. All right. To sum up the warrior archetype in Tarot decisively, we're going to look at the warrior's evolution, moving from the weapon to the will, the minor arcana, to the will, the major arcana, to the wound, the shadow, to rebirth. So that's what we've just done, right? The 3 stages of the Tarot. You can think of this as the toolkit. So we have, pull these all back out. The toolkit, the court cards, right? The warrior shows up in our daily lives through 2 tools, the sword, the mind. This is the warrior of clarity. Remember, the Knight of Swords points to how we fight with truth and strategy. It's about cutting through the noise. And then the second toolkit, the wand, the heart. This is the warrior of passion, right? This is about the fire in your gut and the courage to step forward. Stage 2, right? In the rise of the warrior and the mastery, we transition to the major arcana, the rank of the warrior. As we grow, the warrior matures. The chariot, again, the drive, the warrior finding momentum. It's about self-discipline, showing up even when no one's looking, and keeping your inner beasts moving in one direction. The emperor, the boundary, the warrior becoming the protector of the realm. He doesn't just fight, he builds a kingdom. And then we have strength, the spirit, the highest warrior. She doesn't need a sword. Instead, courage and patience to tame the lion of fear. And then we have our integration, the tower and the star, right? The integration of the battle, the warrior's cycle of death and rebirth. Every warrior eventually faces a battle they cannot win, and this is the ego collapse, the breaking of the old armor. And once that has all fallen, we stand naked. This is the healer warrior who has the strength to heal the battle scars and rise triumphantly to lead with heart. Now, I want to close with one of my favorite cards for the warrior archetype personally. So this is what I've studied and I know, but for me, I'm throwing in a little bit of a wild card. It's a minor arcana, right? I just briefly touched on those. But for me, the 4 of Swords is just as powerful as the Tower and the Star card because, well, after the Battle of the Tower, I would say this is just as powerful as the Star card. So I don't remember if it was a history teacher or something I had read in history class, but this is what I associate with this card. So in medieval times and in ancient times of battle, when warriors would go off to fight, a coffin would be made that would go with them into battle. And they either died and came home in the coffin, or if they didn't die in battle, they came home with the coffin and took time privately to lay in the coffin. Remember the 3 of Swords? After the heartache of what happened on battle, the sword of knowledge is embodied, right? What you experienced on the battlefield. You didn't die. So what are you going to do with the life that you are living after you survived the battle and you move forward? How do you live your life? I think this card is quite powerful. This is a meditation card. This is about taking time and reflecting on one's own inner battles and external battles, right? So this is the daily quest to wield the inner warrior that leads to the sacred meditation. That's how I see it. So remember, the shadow warrior is just as important as the light, so use strength with mercy as you choose the cards that you might want to work with, or if they come up in your reading, you know what they mean. I would love to hear from you all if you feel called to do so, and share your own warrior moments that you might be going through now. I think we all are, and I would love to create a community in the comments section where we all talk to one another and support one another in the times that we find ourselves in. As the star card says, we are all one, right? Aquarius energy. So remember, in closing, that the warrior is not a destination, it's a frequency. You do not need a sword to be a protector, and you don't need a battlefield to prove your courage. The chariot only moves when you take the reins of your own internal contradictions. So carry the fire and the air with you into the mundane world. Let it be the shield for your dreams and the blade that cuts through your doubts. The cards have spoken, but the victory belongs to you. Walk in power, and until we meet again in the next video, at the next threshold, stay brave, and always remember courage to tell your story with a whole heart. May we all come together as one, because we all share one thing in common. We are human. Om Shanti, 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 Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. May it be so. All right, yogis. Thank you.